Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we got something really important to talk about. I know a lot of people have been waiting, but I'm going to give you my first impressions about driving the all-new 2026 Dodge Charger SIXPACK Scat Pack 2-door. Now, Dodge invited me down to Tennessee this past week to actually drive this car. I spent quite a few hours behind the wheel of it. I actually put about 230 miles on one of them, and I drove it across interstates, back roads, and 2 full runs on Tail of the Dragon. And that included one where it actually started snowing out, so that was kind of funny. But after everything I went through this past week with this car, I have to say that hands down, this is the best handling Charger Dodge has ever built, period. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, but considering I've owned two 2014 Dodge Charger RT all-wheel drive cars, I've owned a Chrysler 300C, I've driven pretty much every variant of the Charger and Challenger, except for the Demon 170. I have never driven a Demon 170, but I would have to say hands down that this is the best handling Dodge Charger that they've ever built, period. And I mean that sincerely. And I'm not saying that being a diehard Mopar, fanboy. I'm saying that as a Mopar enthusiast. So before we talk about the six-pack, I need to set the stage on my own car. If you follow me here on the channel, you know that I have a 2025 Dodge Charger Daytona Scat Pack EV. And, I daily drive that car. I love that car. And I figured, that after having that car, I would know exactly how this car would drive before I even drove it. And I was totally wrong. Totally wrong. These cars couldn't be more different than anything I've ever seen. They look the same. When you get into them, they feel the same. But driving-wise, they drive totally different. They're two different types of animals. So my Daytona feels like more of a modern evolution of the older cars. Yeah, you might say, well, that doesn't make any sense because it's an EV. The way it drives, the way it feels more like an evolution. And it's big, it's smooth, it's stable, and because it's an EV, it's quiet, but it's basically the perfect car for boulevard cruising. I get out on Woodward Avenue and cruise up and down it, and it's like the perfect car for that. But when you get behind the wheel of the six-pack car, it feels like Dodge basically went and started over from scratch. The steering is way sharper. It's quicker to react. The chassis feels like it has more communication in it, even though it's the same exact car, like the platform that the Daytona has. It just, the feedback you get through the chassis is totally different. It gives you more confidence in the corners. And the best part is, for a 4,816-pound car, it will shock you because it genuinely feels like it's 700 to 800 pounds lighter when you're pushing it. And I'm not just saying that. It really does. It does not feel like it's its own weight. It's not a sports car by any means. It's not like the handling characteristics of a Miata, but it does not feel like a 4,800-pound car. I mean, it's still a big car for the segment. But honestly, it doesn't feel like it is. It has a lot more response than the old cars. And I would actually say if I didn't know what this car weighed compared to the outgoing cars, I would say that this car would have been lighter, the way it acts. So, she's a big girl, but she loves to dance, and she's very predictable. She rotates cleanly. She grips wherever you'd expect her to grip on the road, and was always fun to drive the whole time I drove her. So this isn't just like one of those, big-bodied Dodge Chargers anymore. This is something entirely new, okay? So again, not Miata-like handling. If you do push it, it does oversteer if you and stuff like that, but it genuinely is a fun car to drive on a twisty road. Before we talked about, Challengers and Chargers in the past, everybody said there were big boats and, they handled like a yacht. This one doesn't. This one actually gives you a lot of response back, and I'm very impressed with what the Dodge engineering team has done with this car. So, but it's far from perfect. There's certain things that keep this car from being perfect. And again, I love the new interior of the car. I think the interior is awesome looking. It's got that dual, kind of level dash. You know, it feels like it's the cockpit kind of wraps around you a little bit. It's way more open, way more airy than the outgoing cars. Night and day difference, but it you know, for how good it is, there's some downfalls with it. You know, I have to say that obviously the interior gives you like the best visibility we've ever seen in a Charger in recent years. The screens look integrated, not slapped on, which I absolutely love. The hatchback design, this is something Dodge should have done a long time ago. You know, you get 127% more cargo capacity in the car. It's more functional, and it kind of harkens back to the 1966-67 fastback design a little bit, with a little bit of design from the 80s Dodge Charger. You know, it's a whole different kind of car, and it still looks like a traditional coupe. That's the best part about it. The seats, I drove a car with the high back seats just like mine have, the high back sports seats. To me, these are the most comfortable seats in all of the car industry right now. They have the perfect amount of padding. You know, I'm really happy with the seats, and again, with the six-pack car, you're getting the same exact seats, so you're going to be super comfortable. And then on top of that, because the car is so big, it has like massive amounts of rear leg room space, especially in a two-door coupe. It's got the same as the sedan, and it's a very legit advantage over cars like the Mustang. You know, I have two teenage kids. I can put them in the back of this car and drive it long distances, and they won't feel like they're crammed in it. The Mustang basically has like a rear seat, but it's like a bench. I mean, I had a 2014 Mustang not too long ago, so I know a lot about Mustangs and stuff and how they drive and how they feel with a family. But this car is just a really good daily driver. But again, there's flaws, because if you look at the interior, the eco-friendly leather, I absolutely hate it. Even in this car, like I had the windows down when it started snowing out because I was talking to somebody, and when water gets on it, it leaves like water stains. You have to wipe it down. It's just, it feels spongy. I'm not a huge fan of it. The lower plastics on the doors scuff so easy. This car only had 700 miles on it when I got in it, and realistically, when I got out of it, I was looking at the door panels and they're scuffed already, and it wasn't from me, it was from other people just driving it. The plastics in this car on the lower parts of the door are just not up to par where the old cars were. In the coupe itself has a longer door than like the Challenger did, and it's kind of hard to get in and out of in tight spaces, so you are going to scuff that panel. But it wouldn't be so bad if the plastics were better in it. And then let's talk about the worst thing about the car. The haptic HVAC controls are the worst controls ever, because first of all, the haptic buttons, they are garbage. They don't give you much feedback. They feel cheap, and I think they're the worst thing about the interior. So hopefully Dodge will change those out in the mid-cycle action sometime soon. I have to say that's the biggest downfall of this car inside. Now, if you're talking about the engine, the biggest downfall, period, about the Hurricane is the fact that it's got all that plastic on the top of the engine, and it has no traditional oil dipstick, so you have to check the oil level via the electronics in the digital gauge cluster, which I absolutely hate. I mean, if I'm going to take this car on a road trip, I want to take and pop the hood, pull the dipstick out, look at the oil level myself, and put it back in. I don't rely on computers, and that really irritates me that they did that. But still, overall, it feels, you know, like a Dodge. It's got modern performance, you know, laid out inside. But yeah, the car does have flaws, okay? It's not perfect, but it does have flaws. But let's talk about the driving. I know a lot of people are wondering, you know, about how it feels to drive. So going from Knoxville to the Dragon, we drove on the highway, and the six-pack actually feels very refined. It feels pretty much like my Daytona. It's quiet, it's stable, it's confident, it's very comfortable. It rides like a proper Grand Tour vehicle. You know, I wouldn't even say it feels like a muscle car. It feels like a GT car. It's not some stiff track toy. It's very like similar to my Daytona, and it just obviously it just makes more engine noise. But then when you get onto the foothills, and it kind of changes. So like, for example, you know, just in auto mode, the car kind of automatically feels like it's lighter. The front end bites harder than any Charger I've ever driven, and the body roll's pretty minimal. I mean, it's not. I feel like this car has a little bit more body roll than my Daytona because of the battery pack being so far down in the chassis, but it doesn't feel like the outgoing cars by any means. The all-wheel drive system works really good in the background. I mean, it feeds power exactly when you need it to go. And again, this is the first Charger that I've driven that actually feels like it was designed for a road like Tail of the Dragon. If you took the last generation cars out, they were sloppy, had tons of oversteer in them. This doesn't feel like that. So once you put sport mode on, when you go to the drive modes and put sport mode on, it turns into a completely different car. So the steering tightens, suspension firms up pretty good. The 880 RE 8-speed automatic transmission, the brand new 4th generation automatic transmission, it shifts really hard, very fast in sport mode. In auto mode, you'd be hard pressed to even know that it's shifting, but in sport mode, it will shift hard. The exhaust valves for the active, dual mode exhaust open up, and you can hear the actual exhaust a lot more. And it's funny because the Hurricane high output engine spools up really quick. The high output compared to the standard output, when I drove them in the Ram trucks, I always felt like the standard output had a little bit of turbo lag up until about 1200 RPM when the turbo spooled up. The HO really doesn't have much turbo lag, so I think a lot of people will be impressed to actually drive it. And again, it doesn't sound like a V8, okay? It's got its own sound. It's different. It sounds like an inline six. It kind of sounds like a mix between a BMW and like a Dodge Viper. Okay, it's got like this kind of growl to it. It's different. And again, I'm going to tell you that this car sounds way better than the Ram 1500 RHO does. Even with that MagnaFlow exhaust, Dodge did a really good job at making this sound aggressive. Is it the best sounding car? No. But the Hurricane is a completely different layout. It's going to sound different. But overall, it's not a bad sounding car. There's no doubt in my mind that the aftermarket will get a hold of this car and keep tuning the exhaust and stuff, and it'll be even better. But one thing I will say is when you're going through the Tail of the Dragon and you're punching on it and letting off and stuff, one of the coolest things is now instead of hearing supercharger whine, you hear the turbo spool up and you hear blow-off valve noises. And it's very addictive getting on it and getting off of the car. So if you're one of those people who like the Hellcat with the supercharger whine, you're going to like this car too because it's got a lot of blow-off noises and stuff like that. So on the way through the Tail of the Dragon, the funny thing is the car actually, it was my first time there, first of all. It was my first time driving it, so I wasn't going like hauling ass through there by any means. I was trying to keep, a steady pace, but about halfway through, I started getting on the car really good. And about 3/4 of the way through, I come around the one part of the mountain there, and it's got snow flurries. So I was like, okay, that's kind of cool because this is an all-wheel drive car. But on the way back, I actually, by the time I got done, the Foothills Parkway was covered with snow. And I'll show you some video of it. It was funny. It just went from like nice and dry to all of a sudden it was snowing out. And it was kind of funny because this car has all-wheel drive. So even with 305 tires, the all-wheel drive system keeps the car predictable, very controllable. There's very little understeer, maybe here and there, but nothing sketchy. And, I would say it actually handles better in those kind of conditions than my 2014 Dodge Charger RT all-wheel drive cars did with the HEMI. So I was really impressed with that. Now, we did get a chance. The thing is with the snow, they actually had a drag strip set up for the day that I went to do 8th mile drag racing. However, because of the snow, they actually closed it because they couldn't race on it. They wouldn't allow us to race on it. So I actually ended up spending just more time with the car, driving it in normal conditions. So we could pretty much do anything we wanted with the car, as long as it was reasonable. So I just took it out on roads and drove it more. And I had a chance to put it in rear-wheel drive mode. So there's a couple things I like about the rear-wheel drive, and one thing I really don't. So in order to be in rear wheel drive, you have to have it in sport mode. Okay. So you put it into the sport mode through the drive modes thing, and then there's basically a button that says rear wheel drive. But you have to come to a dead stop. It's not like you can do it on the fly. So you do have to come to a dead stop. When I had my 2014 Dodge Chargers, I ran a Z Automotive Taser programmer, and I could do basically shift from all-wheel drive to rear-wheel drive or forced rear-wheel drive on the fly. This car does not do that, and I don't understand why. But it's kind of funny when you put it in rear-wheel drive, 100% of the power goes to the rear wheels, and it feels just like the older cars do. It's very tail happy, it's playful, it's eager to rotate. But the thing is compared to those cars, like this thing has 550 horsepower, and you might see some videos online of people driving Challenger Scat Packs and Charger Scat Packs getting crazy and those street takeover things, and just they become like unpredictable. This car is the opposite. It's very predictable. It's very controllable. Dodge did a really good job of that way. But I feel like this car has like the best kind of characteristics of the old Scat Pack and is something totally different. It doesn't have like the sloppiness or looseness of the old chassis. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's got two personalities. You can either drive it like you're, a hoonigan and kick the rear end out in rear wheel drive, or you can have it as like I drove it in the snow doing, 50, 60 miles an hour down in certain parts of the parkway there. And I was very confident with how the car was reacting with the road conditions. So I think of it as the all-wheel drive part of it is like a weapon. Okay. And the rear wheel drive part is kind of the reward. If you want to take and have some fun, you can put it in rear wheel drive anytime you want and have the fun that you want. You can smoke the tires out. You can do massive burnouts. And the funny thing is with how the Hurricane engine is, it has no problem lighting up the rear tires. I think there's quite a few people that were doing burnouts and stuff like that. And the other thing is just to just to give you an idea, the group of people automotive journalists that I was in, we all had our own cars. And I will tell you that 2 people in our group got pulled over for speeding on Tail of the Dragon. It wasn't me, but two other automotive journalists got caught speeding on Tail of the Dragon. So the cops were out. It was funny. We actually were there on Monday. There wasn't much traffic, so there was a lot of like places where you could get on it. But yeah, 2 people actually got pulled over. So I thought it was pretty funny. Let's talk about the Hurricane engine, okay? So, again, 550 horsepower, 531 pound-feet of torque. The mid-range punch is unreal, okay? Boost comes on early, torque hits hard and stays strong, and there's barely any turbo lag. So, the all-wheel drive system lets you kind of use it all the time. And, again, being in the Smoky Mountains, you have a lot of elevation change. You don't feel like anything bogs because of the turbos on it. I was really impressed with how the car reacted. It seemed like, again, being a turbo car, it has a lot of advantages. The Hurricane engine is very complex, and I'm sure if something happened to it, it's going to be costly. But nonetheless, I just feel like this car was built around this engine. It just feels like it was specifically built for this chassis. It's a completely different animal than what I drove in Ram 1500s and stuff like that. It just feels so much better in this car. More responsive, it's just more fun. And I will tell you, and a lot of people are going to hate me for saying this, but I think if they were to throw a Gen 3 Hemi in this car, it would do it an injustice. It would feel sluggish. It would be nose heavy. And considering those engines, I'm talking about the naturally aspirated ones. I'm talking about the 5.7 and the 6.4. Those are fun engines. They sound great and all that. But considering how advanced this car feels compared to the outgoing cars, the last thing I would want to see is something that's not a performer like the Hurricane engine is. There's no doubt in my mind the aftermarket will have fun with this engine once they get a hold of it. In this application, it'll sound better. I'm sure there's going to be companies putting bigger turbos on this car and doing things with it. So I think there's a lot of possibilities. And you got to remember, this is just the first variant of this car. They're going to have the 4-door, They're going to have the SO. They're going to have both, the 2-door and 4-door SO. And then we're going to see stuff like, who knows? We've seen what they did with the last Scat Pack. They had a 1320 drag racing version. They had, a whole bunch of different variants of them. Who knows what they're going to do with this thing? I think there's a lot of possibilities. But after driving this thing, I was pretty impressed because when I actually looked at my mileage, I was getting about 23 in mixed driving. Okay, that's on the highway, back roads, and Tail of the Dragon. When I was doing the Dragon itself, I was doing about 14.2. Now, keep in mind, this car only had 700 miles on it when I actually got into it. So it was barely broken in. So there's no doubt that the car would actually get better fuel economy as time goes on. But when I was talking to one of the program managers for Charger, it was kind of funny because he drove down from Detroit just like I did. And I actually seen him at Buc-ee's in Kentucky. And he was getting 27 miles per gallon at 75 miles an hour the whole way down. So not too bad. I drove my Durango RT down there with the 5.7 HEMI, and I was getting about 21. So considering, how heavy this car is, it's pretty impressive that I can get 27. And some of the guys were telling me that they could get even better if they just, calmed it down. So who knows? I think that this engine could be something very special if hopefully if it again, I want to see a dipstick put in the stupid thing. I don't care, and I want to see some of that plastic taken off, but there's no doubt in my mind as time goes on they're going to make this engine pretty bulletproof. So let's talk about the Mustang, okay? Because obviously the Mustang is probably going to be cross-shopped the most with the Charger. So if you look at the Mustang Dark Horse, right? The Dark Horse has 500 horsepower, 418 pound-feet of torque. All right. Look at the Charger here, the 6-pack. This is the high output one, 550 horsepower, so 50 more horsepower, and then you got 531 pound-feet of torque more. So, or not more, but 531 pound-feet of torque compared to 418. So the Mustang's power lives up at the top end of the motor, where the Charger power lives kind of like in the mid-range. So if you look at the actual performance stats, it depends on what you have. So like the Dark Horse, if you have the automatic, the 10-speed in the Dark Horse, it'll do 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds, which is pretty impressive considering how small that car is compared to the Charger. If you have it as a manual transmission car in the Dark Horse, it's 4.1 seconds. Well, the Charger 6-pack only comes with an automatic, and it's right in the middle of those cars. Considering how big it is, it has all-wheel drive and all that, it does 3.9 seconds 0 to 60. So it's right between the auto and the manual Dark Horse cars. If you look at the quarter mile, same kind of thing. Dark Horse auto will run 12 flat at 118. This car being bigger, more usable, all-wheel drive, all that stuff, will run 12.2 at 114. And if you have the Dark Horse manual, it will run basically 12.6. So the auto Dark Horse will outrun this car a little bit, but not by much. And then if you have the manual car, this car will beat it, no problem. So again, Mustang's faster on a perfect day. That's with perfect weather, perfect tires, perfect driver, all that stuff. But the Charger can be faster everywhere else. Doesn't matter if it's wet pavement, uneven roads, mountain curves, any kind of real life driving. It seems like this car would be better than the Mustang. And again, the Mustang is more of like a precision instrument, where the Charger is the heavyweight street fighter. That's how I would describe it. So, and when you actually look at the pros and cons of the Charger versus the Mustang too, Charger actually has, real rear seats. Mustang's got tiny little seats. The Mustang doesn't have that big of a trunk area in it. Obviously this Charger has a hatch, and it's, massive. There's real comfort in this car. It's more practical for day-to-day use. But what really kills me is everybody complains about the Charger's pricing, but we know everything's kind of gone up since the pandemic. Okay, everything cost-wise has gone up. But if you look at what the Charger offers, okay, 550 horsepower, it's bigger than the Mustang, all-wheel drive, all that stuff. You look at the base price. Let's just look at the very base price of the car. You can compare it to the Mustang Dark Horse. Charger starts out at $54,995 before destination. Okay, 54,995, so 55 grand. Dark Horse starts out at $64,080 before that's before destination charges. So you're looking at, hell, almost $9,000, almost 10 grand between these two cars. I mean, Dodge has priced this car pretty good. In today's market, with things being more expensive, when we talk about these cars being expensive, they are expensive. Cars are very expensive in today's world. But considering what the Mustang is putting out and how big this car is and how better of a daily driver it is, it's actually a pretty good deal. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm happy with the pricing. I would love to see, a car that's maybe having like less power. Obviously we know the SO cars are coming, but I would even mind seeing like a Pentastar version or the new Hurricane 4 being put into it as a commuter car. I definitely think Dodge has room to make something that's more affordable in the lineup. Not everybody needs all-wheel drive, I get that, but we talked about the HEMI, being in the car and being underpowered. The thing is if you're going to build a car that's a performance car, I would rather see this kind of setup and then have something that, you're going to buy that it's not necessarily a performance car, but it's more of like, hey, I'm getting into the car because I like the car and eventually I'll move up to the ranks. But unless this thing has a Hellcat in it or something like that, that's more powerful than the Scat Pack engine, like the actual Hurricane engine, I really could care less about a 5.7 or 6.4 being in this car, to be honest with you. So I just think that this car has a lot of potential if people give it a chance. And the funny thing is if you look back in the past, when I was driving this thing, and again, people won't like me saying this, people think that this is not a muscle car. And I'm sitting there kind of thinking, I kind of agreed with that at first. I was like, yeah, you know what? You got to have a V8, blah, 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 blah. And then driving, I was like, you know what? It kind of clicked with me that the Grand National, the Buick Grand National during the 80s, right? That car was kind of touted as, yeah, it's not a muscle car. It's got a V6 under the hood. But yet that thing stopped almost everything on the street and now has become one of the most collectible cars of the 80s. Period. It's got one of the best reputations of performance for the 80s. I mean, it's a totally different beast than where it was if you were back in the 80s when that car made its debut. And I think this car has the potential to do that. Am I saying that it will be that? No. I'm saying that it has the potential to be something great like that. I think if people gave it a chance, I think they'd be very impressed with the car. Yeah, it's not a HEMI car. Sorry. But the thing is, the HEMI, the 5.7 is 20 plus years old. The 6.4 is getting up there in age. Every automaker is getting ready to either they've built new V8s or they're building new V8s. And I think that ultimately this car deserves a Gen 4 HEMI or some kind of really heavily revised Gen 3. I just don't think that having a HEMI in this car with less power than what this car performs with in this package would do this car any justice. And I honestly feel that way. I don't think Dodge killed the muscle car. I think they kind of evolved it. And I think the next generation or this generation of car is going to be a very fun one. I think they're just starting. When I was talking to some of the guys, they're saying, yeah, this is only the first variant. They have a lot of stuff planned for this car. So be excited. There's a lot of things coming. Again, don't be afraid of turbocharged engines. Dodge has dominated they did dominate the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s with turbochargers. So I think there's a very good potential that, we'll see a V8 in this car, but it'll probably be like an SRT variant. But I just don't want to see like them give in and throw a Gen 3 naturally aspirated 5.7 into this thing. and just have it be a dog compared to what these Hurricane cars could, like, obviously how they perform is pretty damn good. So anyways, tell me what you guys think about my review. Later today, I am going to be doing a little kind of event at about 8 o'clock this evening to talk about and answer your guys' questions about this car. So I'm going to do a little live stream. So if you want, you can join the channel here, and we'll talk all about Dodge Charger, six-pack, and the Daytona and how they compare against other cars. I'm not going to talk about anything else but the Charger, but I want to get your guys' questions and stuff and try to answer them as much as possible. But overall, Dodge did an excellent job with this car. The funny thing is if somebody asked me from Dodge, considering they know I have a Daytona, they asked me, what car would you get if you had to do it again? And the honest God's truth is I love my Daytona. I think the Daytona is the better boulevard cruiser. I think if you're going to go out and you want speed, drag racing kind of speed, just from stoplight to stoplight, the Daytona is the better car. If you want to go out and like drive in long distances, like you can get in this car and go, I feel like after driving this car, I feel like I could go get in it and go across country with it compared to the Daytona and be a lot happier. If I want to take it to a back road where it's curvy and stuff, this car 100% more. They both are, like I said, are totally different animals. And I would be hard pressed not to get my Daytona for what I do with it. But if I was gonna get another one, I would probably wait for the Scat Pack 6-pack 4-door. I really think that car will be something special. So, but as for the Daytona, I still love that car. I think it's great. I'm not a huge fan of the whole EV thing, but I think there's a lot of potential there if that car can get a bigger battery pack, or not bigger, but a semi-solid state battery pack and move the range up a little bit in it. I think it would be a lot more appealing to me. But yeah, I love the way the Daytona acts. To me, it feels like more of an evolution of the last car. This 6-pack car is just amazing. I can't wait for you guys to get out there and drive it. So I do think that this is the very first part of the redemption of the 8th generation car. The Dodge Charger Daytona launched terribly, was not a good picture for this whole new car. It basically wrecked the car's reputation, and I think that this 6-pack car is basically the first step in redemption. So we'll see. But anyways, leave your comments below. Tell me what you think about this car. And make sure to come back at 8 p.m. tonight on the channel, and we will talk everything about the 6-pack car. Any questions you have about it, I'll try to answer them. And, make sure to like the video. Make sure to hit, the new hype button. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. We are on Tail the Dragon, and let me tell you something. For this car being so heavy, it's 4,816 pounds. This thing handles really, really good. With turbos and all-wheel drive, this thing is pretty awesome getting up this hill. Listen to that exhaust. I'm in 3rd gear right now. And the funny thing is everybody says, oh, the Charger is not a muscle car if it doesn't have a HEMI in it. Yeah, I'll tell you something. The Hurricane doesn't sound as good as a HEMI, but man, this thing has very little. The high output version has very little turbo lag. And it can cut corners way better than the last generation Charger. Now keep in mind, this car is 2 inches wider than the actual Charger Scat Pack wide body that it replaces. Oh, my ears are starting to pop. Look at this. Oh, this car can't handle. I'm driving this one-handed right now. Turbos kick in. love it. Not as fast, obviously, as my Daytona for acceleration, because that's instant. But this car handles really, really good. Super, super tight. Chassis is a lot stiffer than the old LD Charger. I love the flat bottom steering wheel and flat top steering wheel, mainly because you can grab it from the top and the bottom and still get a nice grip on it.